Hey guys, I'm going to be showing you some basic photo compositing tools and techniques in Photoshop. So we'll be starting with this basic building, and then we'll be adding to it by adding some trees in front of it and behind it, and we'll be using a lot of different masking techniques and brush techniques to clean up those other objects that we add to this image. And then we'll be adding some signage to it as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I began by just downloading some images that I wanted to work with from Unsplash. And I'll go ahead and link those images down below and credit the photographers there. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and start by adding in these trees. So I really like these trees because they have a lot of different layers to them, right? We have this foreground layer that's very dark, and then it kind of fades off into the background. So I could kind of see this working with my building, right? I would have my building coming out of the middle of it, these trees in front of it, trees back behind it. So anyways, I think this will be a really good starting point for me. Now I am going to go ahead and rasterize this image. So I'm just right clicking on it and choosing rasterize layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a copy of it. So the reason I'm creating a copy of it is so that I have a backup in case I mess up, but also so I have a second image to use later when I want to add that background behind this building. So I used a shortcut to create a copy. I held Option and dragged, and that is the shortcut to create a duplicate. Of course, with Photoshop, there's a million different ways to get the exact same result. But anyways, let's go ahead and add a mask to this. So I'm selecting this trees layer that I have on top, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Layer Mask. So now that I have this mask applied, basically the way a mask works is if it's completely white, that means the whole image is showing. All right, if anything is black on this mask, so for example, if I paint black, it's covered, right? We're hiding this part of the image, showing that background layer through. Okay, so black hides and then white reveals. So if I paint white back on there, I'm just pressing X to switch my foreground and background colors. I can go ahead and add that back in. So one thing I can do is I could go through and just, keep painting around this. That's definitely one option. But for me to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click with my magic wand, and then I'm going to refine this by clicking on Select and Mask. So Select and Mask is a really awesome tool that makes it very easy for me to really go in and select individual parts of an image. So what it did here was it already looks like it did a pretty good job, but I don't want this building in here. So to remove this building, I'm going to click on this button right here. So it looks like a little minus. Sorry about the lawnmower in the background, but this is going to subtract from selection. So then if I just click and drag, I can start to drag over this building that I do not want in here, and it's going to start to remove that from my selection. Now it's not going to be perfect, right? It's very fuzzy, but we can clean this up later. Now something to make note of is I am on the onion skin view. I really like the onion skin view with my transparency kind of in the middle, just because it makes it really easy to see. So everything that's selected is going to be completely solid. Everything that's not selected is going to be kind of transparent. So you can see up here some of those parts of the tree were deselected, which is fine. Luckily with trees, they are very organic, they're very natural. So if they cut off on kind of random parts, it's still going to work. But I love how the tips of these trees are red, so I definitely want to make sure that these are added to my selection. So I am just going over and clicking on them with my Add to Selection tool. All right, and then I could smooth it out further here, but I don't want to smooth it out further. I don't want it to be feathered. I want it to be kind of crisp edges. So this is going to work really well for my starting point. All right, so now I have this selected. So I'm going to go ahead and invert this layer. So right now I have my tree selected, but I actually want the background selected because I want to fill that with black to hide it. So I can go select inverse, or I could just do Command Shift I, and that way that background is selected. And then I just did another shortcut there to fill it with black, but I did Command Deselect because black was set as my background color. So Command Delete just automatically fills it with that background color. All right, so now I've got my trees here on front, but here's the fuzzy part, right? I don't want those fuzzies in there. So I have a few options. I could go in and paint, I could go in and paint black in there, right, to kind of roughen this up a little bit to make them look like more crisper, sharper edges. Or I could use my selection tools, right, zooming in, select different parts. You know, it would take a little bit of time there, but I could definitely do that and then fill that with black. But what I want to do here, I want to show you something that's pretty cool. I can actually use brushes that have a rough textured feel to kind of emulate, you know, what the textures of the top of the tree might look like. Now, to get there, I'm actually using legacy brushes. So these are older Photoshop brushes. There's so many more that you could use, of course. These are just what I'm using. If you want to access these brushes, just click on the little gear and click on legacy brushes, and that will open those up for you. So I'm just scrolling down here because there's one in particular that I wanted to use, and it was this round watercolor. I really like the texture that it creates. So now with my brush selected, I'm going to go ahead and paint black, right? Because I want to hide this top part of the tree with this nice rough texture. Look at that. That looks good. Now that's looking like a treetop. So again, I could have got a very similar effect with painting the other way, but I really like how crisp these edges are. Now the color of the tree isn't really fitting, but that's something we're going to fix later on. So for now, I just want to get rid of all that like fluffy, feathery softness because that was making it look very fake. I want it to look like these trees are actually layered in front of this building. And this is a really great tool to get to that. So I'm just softening these up. It works out really well too because it's not completely solid. So it kind of looks like there's some other branches slightly in the background behind it. All right, let's go to this side because this side was the more difficult side. There's that lawnmower again. All right, but anyways, I'm just kind of cleaning this up quite a bit. We don't really need too much in here, but all right, that looks pretty good. Cool, and then there I have my trees staggered in front of this building. Now I think they're going way too much over it, so I'm gonna just bring that down a little bit. Oh look, there's an outline here, I have to clean that up. So for that one, I am just gonna go ahead and fill that with black. Cool, to remove that. All right, cool. So now I have my other layer here. I'm gonna copy this again, just make another copy. I'm gonna rename this too. This will be foreground trees because they're in front, and then we'll have background trees. All right, so for these background trees, I actually want to put this behind the building. So there's a few ways to go about that. I could either just mask out the middle of this image here, but I think I actually really like the background colors that this has. So I want to actually just remove the background of this building. So I'm going to go ahead and create a copy of this building. Oh, it won't let me copy it because it's locked. So click on the lock button to unlock that original layer, and then I'm just going to move it to the top. And then again, a bunch of different ways we can go about selecting this, but I am going to do it through our select and mask. This tool just makes it really, really easy for me, especially because it's on a plain background. All I have to do is click select subject. It's saying it'll discard my current selection, which is fine. My current selection was terrible. And that's going to find the object for me, and then that's perfect. So it's already selected. I'm going to hit OK. All right, so now that that's selected, I'm going to click on my mask, and there we go. The background is officially masked out of my building. So I'm just going to move that building behind the foreground, and perfect. So now when we put this image behind it, it actually looks like it's stacked. So I really like where that's going. So I did this in a backward step. This time I did the selection first, then applied the mask. In the first time I did it with the trees, I did the mask first, then applied it. Either way will get you the same exact result. You can find the way that works best for you. All right, so now I have these really nice background trees, and I actually want to line it up, I think, pretty evenly with my original. Like, it does look kind of cool to have those staggered trees, especially once I make these darker. But basically my goal for this is I want to add like hot air balloons and fun stuff to this. So to do that, I want a lot of sky. So I think this will work really well. Now I'm going to hide that base layer just so it's clear to see that that background was removed. And now I can see that I need to add in a background, right? So to do that, I'm just going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this sky. And then I'm going to select from my background, again, just kind of fill that sky. And now I need to use my brush, a very soft brush, to start to just add in the rest of those colors. So I'm making this a much larger size, pressing I to switch to my eyedropper, and then from there I can just start to paint in. Cool. And I love these colors so much. They're so relaxing. All right, and again, just kind of painting in on that new layer I'd created that's behind this one. And I could always blend these out further, right? I could put a mask on my background trees and I could kind of feather out that top layer. And I'll actually go ahead and do that just to show you. But again, switching to my brush tool, painting black, have my mask on there, and I'm just going to paint black over top of this. So that way it's a really smooth transition. So that way if I did mess up, like let's say on my sky, for some reason I went and painted brown, it still looks smooth, right? It still looks really smooth there. It's because I created that mask with that fade. But for now, I'll go ahead and click undo. All right, now I want to remove these birds back here. They're cool and all, but not quite what I wanted. So again, a bunch of different options here for removing those birds. One way that I'll go about it this time is I'll just use my patch tool, which is basically where I just enclose the object that I want to remove and then click and drag to get it out of the scene. All right, that's looking good. Now look down here. Uh-oh, that's a big problem. We have a lamppost. We got to get rid of the lamppost. All right, so I'm going to see which layer that's on. So that is on my background trees. Now, again, to get rid of this, there's a bunch of different options. So one way I could do it is I could use the spot healing brush tool. With that, I basically just click and I can drag if I wanted to, and it'll remove it. It's called the spot healing tool because it's really good for blemishes. You can just click over like the pimple or whatever it might be to remove it. But you could also click and drag with it. There's also the regular healing brush where you hold Option or Alt on your keyboard, and then I'm pressing open bracket to make it larger, and then I just click and drag. So when I pressed Option, it's sampling from that area that I selected. And so basically from that selection, it's going to pull from that and follow it. Okay? So that's another way I could do it. And then one way that I really like is the content aware fill tool. So I can just select this here and then go edit, content aware fill, and it's going to automatically analyze my background and remove that shape for me. So again, a bunch of different ways to get the same result there. All right, but this is looking good. This is looking good. I think I want to go ahead and start to add some more objects to this, to start to add some more interest. So I could go File, Import, or I could just go ahead and click and drag. And that's what I'll do for these demonstration purposes. All right, so now I have these hot air balloons that I want to put into my image. I'm going to put them on the top layer, just so I can clearly see them. Okay, now I'm going to do some destructive editing. Destructive editing is bad. You don't typically want to do this, because what you should do is apply a mask instead, right? But I know 100% that I don't want this bottom part, that I'll never want these balloons, so I am just going to go ahead and remove them. I got to rasterize it first because it's currently linked to that image that I'd pulled from. All right, so now the bottom part is deleted, and I'm going to do that same thing I did before where I removed the background. So this looks like a pretty good selection, but just to be safe, I'm going to do select and mask, select subject. All right, so it chose these two main balloons as my subject, but I want to make sure that these other balloons get in there as well. So again, I'm just selecting this add to selection tool, and then I'm going to make my cursor a little larger and click and drag over it. All right, so I'm adding all these balloons back into my selection. Now, there's some parts of the balloons that are kind of close to the edge that I don't know if they were selected. So yeah, it looks like they weren't, because this color was so similar to the background. So I do want to just make sure that that whole image there is selected and that we have these little baskets in there too. All right, this is looking good. I want this one in as well. And gotta get the basket. All right, let's go ahead and see how our selection turned out. one more basket. All right. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and apply a mask. All right, looks great. Now there's some areas that do still need a little bit of cleaning up. So again, I'm just making sure the mask is selected. I'm going to click on a kind of like a mid-range brush. It's slightly hard. And then changing the size of my brush. And then just going in and just starting to remove some of that white just to clean up these edges a little bit further. Alright, so I've got my balloons cleaned up quite a bit, and I do want to just start to clean up the balloons themselves, like the actual logos on the balloons. So I'm just going to quickly select, I'm using my lasso tool to quickly select these logos on it. I won't do all of them, I'll just do a few really quickly to show you. And then go to Edit, Content Aware Fill, and then I'm going to hit OK. That looks alright. Definitely more that we can do to kind of fix the angle of it. So I'm going to start with this for now. I'll hit OK. And then I do want to just go over and kind of clean up those edges a bit. So this is where I'm going to kind of use some of those other tools. So for example, the patch tool, right? I really don't like how this piece kind of juts out like that. Oh, so I had a problem here. I was on the mask. So I need to make sure I have the balloon selected. Again, I'm selecting the area that I want to replace and then going over a part that I like. All right, that looks good. Looking better, looking better. And then doing the same thing. Cleaning up this line. All right, so it's starting to look a little bit smoother. It's still not perfect. So again, going with the healing brush tool now. Sorry, the spot healing brush tool. And I'm just going to draw over top of these lines just to kind of blend them out. And again, I could spend a lot more time really drawing these out and refining them, but I'm trying to do this relatively quickly. But I think that looks pretty decent. All right, and then I'm gonna do the same thing, clearing out this guy, and I'll leave that one for now. Cool, I definitely want to clear out this. All right. Okay, cool. Now I think I have the balloons kind of how I want them. I'm gonna scale this up just a little bit. Now I think I want these balloons to actually be behind the building, but I do want like at least one I think to be in front. And I think I want a few more kind of floating out into the distance. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna create a copy of this just in case I need it with the mask later. Then I'm going to take this one here and I'm actually going to apply the mask to my image. So now these are permanently, those backgrounds are permanently removed. So this is a little destructive. I can't go back to it, but that's why I made that copy here. Now I really like this balloon, so I think I want to make a copy of this one and use Command C, Command V to paste, and I'm going to put that one in front here. So I'm holding Shift to kind of scale it. Well, I'll just scale it upward. I think I want it to be a little taller looking, and then I'll also flip it. Okay, cool. So that looks different now. That's at a different angle. It's kind of a different shape. But if that balloon were in front of the building, it should have some sort of reflection, right? So to make that reflection, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy. I'll call this front balloon. I'm going to duplicate this front balloon. And I'm going to stretch it out because that's kind of how it would look in the reflection if it were coming across these. Something like that. And I'm going to lower their opacity. And then again, I'm going to play with the masking a little bit. So I'll put a mask on that and then just start to, this time I'm going to use my polygonal lasso tool to start to draw out these window frames. All right, so now I'm just going to add in some of those highlights to the other side. So I'm just kind of painting in a bit of a soft yellow, making sure I have that layer selected. Going to my brush, going to a new layer, and I'm going to make a clipping mask. So with a clipping mask, everything I do is only going to be clipped within that image that it's pointing to. So everything I do here, it's clipped within that shape. So again, I'm just going to kind of lower the opacity. I could even apply a blending mode to it. All right, so there we have soft light, and that looks pretty good. I think it needs a little more yellow. These balloons, though, they still have quite a few things that we could definitely make improvements on. So for example, their colors don't really fit in with the rest of it. Plus, we have some issues with some of these kind of peeking through that I don't really want. So I'm just going to mask that one out really quick. That one's an easy fix. All right, so I'm just going to put all these balloons that are in the background into a folder. We'll just call these background balloons. And then what I want to do is I want to add an adjustment layer. So adjustment layers are great because they're non-destructive ways of applying different colors, of changing brightness, contrast, saturation, all sorts of good stuff. So I do want to adjust my color balance because I want some of these warm pink tones and these really pretty pinkish hues to really show in my balloons. Now, to make sure this is only applied to my balloons, I need to make sure I do a clipping mask. So I have to right click on that and choose apply a clipping mask again, just like I did before. And that's going to apply to everything in these folders that it's clipped to. So now again, going back to that mask, I could start to play with these tones to kind of get these balloons here to be the color that I want them to be. Yeah, I really like those warm tints. I'm going to add one more, this time for saturation. Right now these are a little bit too bright. So again, creating a clipping mask, and I'm just going to desaturate them a little bit because I want this to be a very kind of neutral, soft image. I don't want it to be super bright, super jarring. I want it to feel very like calming and soothing. So we can actually make them a little bit lighter. And then yeah, desaturated is good. Cool, I like where that's going. So then I'm just going to take these two, I'm going to take these two adjustment layers that I had created, and I'm going to duplicate these for that front balloon. Again, creating a clipping mask, so now it's applied to him as well. Now this one, I might want this one to be a little bolder. So for this one, I'm going to make it a little more saturated and a little darker too. It's so close to the building. So now this building, if this were here, if this tree were in front of it, there should be a bit of a shadow on that building. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, there's a bunch of different ways to go about this. I'm going to use my burn tool. Now for you, it might be under your dodge tool, it might be under the sponge tool. But you just want to keep an eye for this section of your toolbar. You might find a little lollipop. But I want to make sure I select the burn tool. This is going to really darken certain areas. So I'm using a large, soft brush. Again, I'm just kind of painting in that darker color to really make it look like it's shadowed by these trees. Now, that makes a really big issue though, right? Because now these trees are too light. They're way too light, way too bright. So we've got to darken those trees that are in the foreground. So to do that, I'm going to do another adjustment layer. This time we'll go to brightness, contrast, create clipping mask, and let's go ahead and darken that up. So now we have that really dark silhouette of the trees in our foreground. That's looking great. All right, so now I can, once I'm done, I can start to apply adjustment layers to the entire image to really make it look more cohesive. But before I do that, I want to put some text on here. So I'm just selecting my text tool, and then what do I want to call my building? Well, I really like the book Wuthering Heights, so maybe I'll call this like Wondering Heights. I want to make it very mysterious, right? Or Wondering Heights. I don't know, we'll go with it. Wondering Heights Co. Perfect. All right, so for this, I was already using a very bold typeface, so I think this one will actually work really well. I'm using Avenir Black, but the key is just to pick something that's very strong and bold and looks like it could be used for signage. Now, by default, this does not look good. This doesn't look good at all, right? It doesn't look realistic. So we've got to start doing some manipulation to this to make it look real. So one of those things that we need to do is we need to skew it, right? We need to actually make this match the shape of my building. So I'm just kind of eyeballing the ledges here and bringing it down. Again, clicking and dragging off to the side to kind of get it where I want it. So since I already have it typed out, I'm going to go ahead and rasterize this type so it becomes a shape. That just makes it a little bit easier for me to work with. So now as rasterized too, I also get more options. So for example, I can adjust the perspective. Now I don't want it intense perspective or pretty much straight on. It could maybe have like a little bit, but it would need to be very, very subtle. All right, that looks good. So then I'm going to right click on it and choose blending options. And from here, I can do something called beveling and embossing. So this is what's going to make it look like it's like protruding off the building. So I could do like an inner bevel, but we don't want that. We want it to look like letters that are offset. They're coming off of it. So an outer bevel is going to work really well. I can adjust the height, but again, I want it to look really realistic. And I want it to look like it's coming from the right direction. So I need to change the angle of this. There we go. So that way the angle matches the angle of the building because we're looking at it from this side. So because of that, we need to match that angle. All right, so it's really easy to go overboard with this, so I want to make sure I keep it nice and subtle, nice and realistic. I will add a very slight drop shadow to it since it looks like the rest has a shadow based on the direction of the light. We want to keep it very close to the building, right, because it's kind of like a frontal light. I'm just basically judging this based on the shadows that are cast on the building right now. All right, that looks good. So one thing it needs is a texture. Now, I'm going to apply the texture though, not in this panel, just because there's a better option. I'll go ahead and show you that better option for this. So what I want to do is I want to go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. The reason I want to add noise is because all the rest of my images have noise to them, right? So I want to add a little bit of that, not that much, a little bit of that texture to it, just so it better blends with the rest of my image. The other option is I could have gone through and sharpened everything else, but I kind of like this vintage aesthetic that it's going for, so I'm going to just add the noise to that. All right, that's looking good. That's looking really good. Now, I need it on the side of the building too. So to get on the side, I'm going to scale this down, and then I'm going to right click, go to Skew, and I'm going to bring it downwards. All right, so it looks like I did not make it small enough. All right, so we have our text now. It's embossed, it's coming off the building, we have it on the side, we have our hot air balloons. So let's put some effects over top of this, again using my adjustment layers, so that way there's room for error. I can go ahead and apply, I'm gonna start with brightness and contrast, because what I'm going for, I want this to kind of look like a night scene in a way. So I want it to look like just a little bit more dark. So yeah, I'm lowering the darkness here, or lowering the brightness to make it darker. I want it to look like the evening, you know, it's kind of like sunset and the sky starts to turn shades of pink. It's my favorite time, but that's what I'm going for here. So again, I'm going for lower contrast because high contrast can be great to make images really like jarring and powerful and exciting to the eye. But I don't want that. I want mine to be kind of serene and relaxing. So again, just lowering the brightness a little bit here. And then I'm also going to do another one, this time for color balance. So I definitely want more hints of blue in it because it's a night scene, right? We start to see tints of blue as the sun goes down because we're removing that warmth a little bit. But I still want those pinks. There's still a hint of the sun. Cool, so I really like where this is going. All right, and then I could spend more time playing with this. There's quite a few other adjustment layers as well. But I think this looks really good for what I was going for. We've got the more realistic buildings, realistic signage on the buildings now. We have our trees going around it. We have some fun hot air balloons. And it's a really fun piece, and there's so much more you can do. So I hope with these techniques you guys are able to find them useful and maybe apply them to some of your own photo compositing work. So please let me know if you guys have any questions at all or if there's anything else I can assist with, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll talk to you later.